Okay, so you've gone to the tutorials channel, you watched the thrilling Lord Ash's Everything You Want to Know About Custom Minis videos, and you made some custom minis in Unity. You've created your asset bundles. Maybe you've even gone through the process to try them out in Talespire, and now you've come to the realization that great, you've got the asset bundle on your computer, but if you want to play with other people, they're going to need it too. So, what are the ways to get your Unity asset bundles into Talespire for everyone? That's what we're going to be discussing now. So, there are three main ways to get your custom minis built in Unity into Talespire. Listen to some comments there. One way is a zip file of the installed assets. Another way is to use a local R2Modman asset pack. And the third way is to use Thunderstore R2Modman packs. So, let's start with the first solution. That's using a zip file. The use of a zip file is the easiest way for the GM to distribute custom minis to players. The GM must first install the custom minis on his or her own machine, and then zip the corresponding folder, which can then be shared with others. This is the only method out of the three methods listed that will work to add custom minis to devices that do not have a modded Talespire. In such a case, a few extra steps are needed, but the core process is the same. So here we're going to just discuss the core process. We're not going to discuss the additional steps for using those minis on a non-modded Talespire, but just keep in mind that if that's something you want to do, this is the process that you should be using to distribute the custom minis. So, first what we need to do is consult our R2Modman settings to determine where our mods are installed. So here you can see I've gone to the settings tab, then I've gone to the location sub-tab, and one of the things that you will find there is browse your profile folder, and that will have the location of the install folder for the currently selected profile. So my current profile here is Abyss, and this is the location where I have decided to install all my content. Okay, then we're going to open that location in Windows Explorer or a similar program and create a new folder. The typical use for testing is local content in square brackets, but if your plan here is to share these minis with other players, you probably want to use a more meaningful name for the folder for two reasons. A, it'll help identify what those minis are for, and two, it will not conflict with the local contents folder on their own machines in case they've got some of their own unique content. Okay, so then we're going to create a subfolder within that folder called custom data. This folder must be named exactly, and it may even be case sensitive, so write it exactly like that. This folder basically tells the file access plugin, which is the plugin that's used by most plugins to do file reading, that the content within is basically available for use. So any files that are outside the custom data are not going to be available to other plugins. Any files inside the custom data folder are accessible to other plugins via the file access plugin. Now, if you are planning to use the custom minis with players that don't have a modded Talespire, you have to place your asset bundles files directly in the custom data folder. If you are not worried about that, if you're using the minis with players that all have a modded Talespire, you can use subfolders. So if all players are using a modded Talespire, you can add any number of subfolders within the custom data folder for content organization. For example, instead of custom data, you can go with custom data minis. Now again, the custom data folder must be there, but you can create any number of subfolders such as minis or minis PC under that custom data folder to organize your content. Now, you also need to ensure that you have the Kelp plugin, that is the Custom Asset Library plugin, because that is the plugin that then takes the content, registers it, and makes it appear in your Talespire library. Without Kelp, unless you've taken the extra steps to make the content work with a vanilla Talespire, it will not work. Okay. The other important thing to note is that when you run Talespire, it's going to, the Kelp plugin is then going to register your custom minis and make them available. It is very important that that folder that you created, or any of its subfolders, so the custom data subfolder or subfolders in there, or any files that you've placed in there, are not open in any program. That does include the Windows Explorer. So basically, once you're ready to run Talespire, close your Windows Explorer so that it's not open, because during the registration process, it's going to rename some folders, and if you've got them open, it can't do that, and your registration will fail. Okay, so once you start running Talespire in modded mode, what you can do is you can open up the console window that starts up automatically when you run Talespire modded, and watch that. At the beginning, it's going to basically register a whole bunch of stuff, so you'll see lots of console messages flying by. Once that basically stops, you can turn Talespire off, because that's all that we needed. Of course, the console there'll be console messages going there from other plugins too, so that just kind of wait until it looks like that no more console messages are being generated. It is generally not a good idea to gauge this by the fact that Talespire has gone to the main menu, because if you have a lot of assets to register, Talespire may already be in the main menu, but it might still be registering content in the background. So the best practice is to watch that console window, and once it seems to have kind of died down, it will periodically generate some messages from core Talespire, but if you can see that the registration process is kind of stopped, then it is safe to turn off the Talespire and continue on with the next step. So what the next step is basically open up your Windows Explorer again, find that folder that we created, and you want to right-click the new folder that you created and select Send To, and then select the compressed zip folder. This is going to take that whole folder and zip it up for you, and that's what we're going to distribute to your other players. So now that you have a zip file that contains your custom minis, you can share that file with your players. Now again, this process doesn't share that, so you're going to have to use something like Google Drive or Dropbox. Usually you can't use things like Discord or email because the file may be too big. Depends on how many custom minis you have in your zip folder. But anyways, yeah, you need to get it to your other players in some way or another, because again, to use custom minis, all the players in the session need to have a copy of the files. And once they get the zip file, all they need to do is unzip that zip file into their own plugins folder. Now again, their own plugin folder may be different than where yours was, so they can use the same process in R2 Modman, look under Settings, Locations to see where their plugin install folder is, and they just unzip it into there. That should create that folder that you created with all of the content in there, and because you've already gone through the process to register it, it should already be pre-registered, so the players should be good to just run Talespire and have it working. So remember, all the players must have the zip file installed and have the Calp plugin in order for this to work. If some player does not have either of Calp or the files, they will most likely see a ghost image that that just looks like a ghost, and they won't be able to tell what it is. If you get the situation where you see the base has loaded, but there's no mini, that typically means that you've left the custom folder open during the registration step. So just make sure that, again, when you're registering the custom minis, that the corresponding folder and any subfolders or files within are not open in any program. And that's basically how you use a zip file to share your minis with other players. So now let's look at the next one. Another option is to use a local pack. So the advantages of the local pack is that your content will show up in R2Modman, so you can easily enable it, disable it, or uninstall it. But we're still not using a public site like Thunderstore to distribute it. So this is great if you have minis that you've created, let's say from Hero Forge assets, which are not legally allowed to be mass shared, but you are able to share them with your own group. You can create an asset pack for your group, distribute it. They can load it using R2Modman so that it all shows up in R2Modman, but you haven't actually put it on any public site for other groups to access it. So the process of making a pack is the same regardless if you use it locally or if you use it on Thunderstore. So this is the process for both these two solutions. The difference between the two is how you apply the pack. So again, the local pack is basically you've created the pack and you've got a local copy of it. You tell R2Modman where to find it locally, and it will show up in R2Modman. When going through Thunderstore, you basically upload it to the remote Thunderstore site, and then anybody can access it from there. So to start, we go to the Thunderstore website. That's talespire.thunderstore.io, and browse the contents for a Lord Ashes plugin. Doesn't really have to be a Lord Ashes plugin, but we know that the Lord Ashes plugins have the proper files that are supposed to be present when uploading a pack or making a pack, so that's why I recommend starting with one of those. Then when you go to the site, you will see that one of the options is at the end where you see all the versions. There is a column that says download link, and then there's a column beside that that says install. Typically when we want to install a plugin, we hit the install button, but that's not what we want to do here. In this particular case, we want to hit the number that appears in the download link instead. What that does is instead of installing it, it downloads the zip file of the plugin. So what that's going to allow us to do is easily unzip it and get some important files that we need, instead of having to go and search your computer for one of the existing packs to get those files. So the three files that we're interested in that should be in every pack you make is the icon PNG file, license.txt file, manifest.json file, and the readme.md file. So the icon.png file is basically the picture that shows up in the Thunderstore. License.txt is basically the license agreement under which you're making this available. Normally, I just use the one that's there and don't modify it, but if you have some special conditions, you can modify the license. The manifest.json file is the very important file. That's the one that gives your pack a name and a description, and that's how Thunderstore and R2Modman differentiate the pack, understand what it is, find out what the version is, and so on and so forth. And lastly, we got the readme.md file. That's just a text file that can use markdown formatting, and it basically describes what your pack is about. We tend to suggest that it also contain a change log, so that when you update the asset pack, you provide a reason or you provide a short description of what was updated, so that users can know what the difference between various versions of your pack are. But really, the readme.md file, you can put anything in there that you want. The description and changelog are conventions, but if you want to put some credits or acknowledgements or whatever, go right ahead. So what we're going to do is we're going to unzip that file that we downloaded. In there, we're going to find at least those 4 files. So most likely there will be more files, but we're going to copy those 4 files out and place them in a new folder, which is going to contain our new pack. Then we're going to edit the manifest.js file with information about our pack. So without changing that information, it will not work, because that means you're going to be uploading it based on a completely different pack name, and that will just confuse things. So yes, you need to edit the manifest.js file with information about your pack. So the manifest.js is a JSON file, pretty easy to fill in. The name is a unique name that identifies your pack. When you make updates to the pack, make sure the name remains unchanged, so that Modman recognizes it as being an update. Every time you put out a new version of your pack, you need to increase the version number so that the R2Modman can understand which is the newer version. There's also an option for a description. That's the description that will briefly show up, or will show up in R2Modman when you're using the online tab. So it's good to put a brief description in there. You can put in a website URL if you want. And then there's the dependencies. Do not put Calp or any similar plugin as a dependency if you are only putting custom minis into your pack. Doing so prevents the pack from being used if there is a need to switch to a different custom mini plugin. So we've had this happen in the past. Originally, when we started out with custom minis, it was the custom mini plugin. After that, we changed to the extra asset registration plugin, and now we are on Calp. Usually when we make these changes, it's because BR has changed the code in the background, and we need a new approach to make custom minis work. And what has happened is, in the past, some packs were made that had a dependency for extra asset registration plugin, and that means now once we've switched to Calp, it's asking for that plugin, and therefore the pack doesn't work. So we had to create a fake extra asset registration plugin that doesn't do anything except just satisfies the dependencies so that the pack could be used with Calp. So again, if you are just putting in custom minis into your pack, don't put any dependencies. The array should be blank, and that way when the custom mini plugin changes to something else because BR made changes, your pack will hopefully still be usable. So next we want to open the icon.png file. That's an image that shows up in Thunderstore, and we can change that to a number of things. You can use a screenshot of your assets that you have added. If you're providing many assets, you could put in some kind of an image that represents the theme of your pack. So, you know, if you're doing all fire related stuff, put a fire image there, whatever. Or you can just go with the Talespire logo like I have been doing. But in that case, please, if you are using my pack for the icon, it will have a LA initials in the corner. Please remove those because, well, if it's your pack, it shouldn't have the Lord Ash's initials on the logo. Lastly, we want to update the readme.md file. Like I said, this is a text file that can use markdown formatting, and the contents is really up to you. Again, it is a good idea to provide a description of what your pack contains and a changelog, but if you want to add anything else, go right ahead. So, for R2Modman to properly deploy the asset pack, we need to create a plugins subfolder and a custom data subfolder within that folder. Basically, when R2Modman installs packs, anything that is not in a plugins folder has to be like a DLL file, which is typically used for actual plugins, not custom minis, and anything else will be ignored. What the plugins folder does is it tells R2Modman anything inside the plugins, copy it over exactly as is. So the plugins subfolder basically is then allowing our custom minis to also be installed. And we need the custom data subfolder after that. As we said, file access plugin looks for the custom data folder to identify what files are available to other plugins. So that's why we create this the custom data folder, so that Calp can then find your minis. Asset bundle files made in Unity can be placed directly within the custom data folder, not file, or they can be placed in any number of subfolders within the custom data folder. Any content that is outside the custom data folder will not be properly registered and thus will not work. So for example, we could have, if we're making a asset pack called Bandits of Ice, we would then have the plugins subfolder, which we require. We would then have the custom data folder, which is required, and then we could put our asset bundles in there, or we can do some subfolders, such as in this case, example here, we're suggesting that we create a mini subfolder and then even further subdivide that into PC minis. Once we got that, we are going to zip up the main folder that has those four core files plus the plugins subfolder, and give it a name that follows the author-name-version format. So for example, Lord Ash's-Bandits of Ice-1.0.0.zip. Now, in R2Modman, you can use the import local mod option to add the pack to your profile. This will make it show up in R2Modman like any other mod, and thus can be easily disabled or removed when no longer needed. So again, in R2Modman, you go to the Settings tab, then you go to the Profile sub-tab, and there should be a selection for Import Local Mod. Once you click on that, it's going to give you a dialog to go find the file that you want to import. You just point it at your zip file, and that will then install it like any other mod, but using a local file instead of getting it from Thunderstore. The process of uploading custom minis to Thunderstore is a very similar process to using a asset pack locally, except that instead of importing it locally, it is uploaded to Thunderstore and then downloaded from Thunderstore by any player who needs it. Obviously, using Thunderstore means that you are making your assets available to other groups besides your own. You should not use Thunderstore for putting up assets that are only going to be used in your game. That is not proper etiquette. You should only post to Thunderstore content that is intended to be used by other groups, yours and others. And you should only post to Thunderstore if you have the legal right to do so. So, The process of distributing custom minis through Thunderstore requires the creation of an asset pack, which is made exactly the same way as for a local asset pack, so the process we just went through. The difference is that the asset pack is uploaded to Thunderstore, where it can be obtained by any other user as opposed to importing it locally. So upload to Thunderstore only if the custom mini asset pack is intended to be shared, intended to share the minis with other groups beyond your own, and the license agreement for the content allows the mass distribution of the content. So for example, if you have downloaded a Hero Forge mini, not using a Hero Forge mini through the Talespire core integration, but have actually downloaded the asset, modified it, and then want to use it with your session, you can't legally post them on Thunderstore, because that is distributing a Hero Forge asset to a mass group, which is not allowed by license. So instead, you can share it with a small group, like the group of players that you're playing with, and that has to use one of the other methods to distribute it, not Thunderstore, because Thunderstore is open to all users. Once we've got our asset pack made, we go to talespire.thunderstore.io and then click on the upload button. Make sure you're logged in, or the upload button may not appear. Once you've got that, you should see a screen similar to what we've got here on the page, and you can drag and drop your zip file into the dark blue zone and then fill out the rest of the information there. If this is the first time you're uploading a pack, you'll have to make what they call a team. You can just use your own name if you're not developing with anybody else. If you are developing with somebody else, you can create a team name and then add your members to your team, so that either one of you can post content. Under communities, you're going to want to select Talespire, obviously, and then you'll have an option to select different tags to use for your content, to mark your content. Typically, you'll want to select the assets tag to indicate that it's an asset pack, possibly some other tags also. Once you've done that, you can hit the submit, and it will go through and validate whether or not your manifest file is correct, and if so, it will post the content to Talespire, to Thunderstore. And once there, it can take about 10 minutes to propagate through, so if you don't see it immediately in Thunderstore, don't worry. But after about 10 minutes or so, it should show up in Thunderstore and should also be then available to download through R2ModMan if you're using the online tab. I personally don't recommend using the R2ModMan online tab unless you know exactly what you're looking for, because by going onto the web page itself, you will immediately also see the documentation along with it. So if there's any warning or special, something special that you need to do to make that pack work, you'll see it right away, whereas in R2ModMan, you'll just see a short description and you won't have that additional information. But both ways do work. And once you do that, the asset pack will be available in Thunderstore for all users to use. Like I said, there can be upwards of about 10-minute delay before it shows up, but once it does, it is there. Please be careful when you are posting to Thunderstore, because there is no option to delete content. So if you make a mistake, if you upload something that you shouldn't have, there are ways to get it removed, but you basically have to request an administrator to remove the content for you, as opposed to you being able to delete the content yourself. And that's about it. 3 different ways to share your custom minis with your group.